Welcome back to r/neighbors from hell, where people share stories about their crazy neighbors. And if you're new to my channel, please don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. And without any further ado, let's dive right into the stories. The first one is titled, "Neighbor damaged my fence and cut down my trees. I planted dozens of trees in his backyard." Hello, you wonderful people of Reddit. Today not only are you going to get to hear about my jerk of a neighbor, but I'm going to get to brag about what I did as revenge without anyone knowing it is me. This is one of those moments that you have to love the anonymity of the internet. Anyway, the main issue is that my neighbor has been looking for a way to come after me for years. I have no idea what I have done exactly to annoy this guy so much, but he just seems bitter and wanting to start fights for no reason. Things came to a climax though when he decided to call the city on my fence, claiming that it wasn't conforming to the regulations. Honestly, I have zero clue what the height of my fence has to do with him, because I can unfortunately still see him over it and everything. In my personal preference, the fence would be higher to block him out of my view completely. Anyway, the city sent somebody to come and check it out, and it turns out that my fence was half an inch above the maximum height allowed. Now, before you come into the comments and tell me how if it was too high it was my fault, it kind of wasn't. The regulations changed a couple years ago, and I honestly had no idea that my fence was conforming to the regulations back then, and now it wasn't because I don't keep track of the exact height of my fence. Anyway, even though half an inch seemed like basically nothing to me, it was enough for the city to do something if a complaint was made. Even though I'm pretty sure many people have fences my height that just were not getting complained about. My neighbor, of course, decided that he needed to complain about the fence, and the city sent me a letter saying that I had 2 weeks to take it down or I would be fined. So I ended up having to waste a ton of money getting that fence taken down and a new one that was almost identical but about an inch shorter put up while I watched my neighbor give me a dirty smile from his property. This is where a bigger man would have walked away, but I'm not that strong of a man. Especially what my neighbor ended up doing next. It turns out that he had made other complaints without me even knowing about my trees. So one day I saw men in my backyard taking down my trees. I was livid and honestly could only stand in shock for a while after I asked them why they were taking them down, and they didn't have the whole story. It turns out that neighbor claimed my trees were growing dangerously close to the power lines. I get them pruned regularly to make sure that the branches stay away from the lines, but he made up some story about them that the city seemed to believe. I was devastated and decided to get revenge. I looked up the laws in my city and found one that seemed to stick out to me. It said that unless the city deems it a hazard or dead, no healthy tree or sapling may be removed from a property. This gave me a wicked idea of how I was going to get back at my neighbor. It was clear that he was not a tree person, so I was going to kill him with kindness. Or treeness? We will see. I went to the nursery and got a ton of tree saplings. I lost count, but it was a ridiculous amount. But not too many that the city would deem them needing to be taken down. Our yards are identical, so I used mine as a guideline for spacing and everything. The saplings ranged from pine, oak, cherry blossom, dogwood and anything else that they had at the nursery. I spent more money on this than I wish to admit, even anonymously online. So, one night when everyone was asleep, I snuck into my neighbor's yard and started planting the saplings. It took several trips across the property lines, but I was not seen or heard. I was almost like a tree ninja and could not wait to see what his reaction would be in the morning. I could not tell how it looked at night, but when the morning came, I woke up extra early to take a final look and make sure everything looked like it should. Even in the dark, I did a good job, and his yard now had dozens of saplings that would turn into beautiful trees. Just to make a quick disclaimer, he had a good amount of land back there, so when the trees grew, it would not be like a forest or anything. I made sure that even when they were fully grown, it would be aesthetically pleasing. I may love revenge, but I'm not a monster who wants to give him an ugly backyard. When he saw it, his reaction was priceless, and he saw me looking at him and ran up to me. He started saying how he knew I was responsible and that he was going to take me to court and sue me. I looked at him confused and said that I had no idea what he was talking about, that I thought that the changes he made to his yard were beautiful. I knew that he had no way to prove that I was the one responsible for the changes. He also knew that if he tried to remove and destroy the saplings, I was going to go right to the city and say what he did. Then he would have received a fine of his own, and that would be per tree. So he was really stuck with nothing else to do but complain to the other people in the neighborhood. The kicker was that none of them believed him that it was me, because I don't seem like the type to do that. Some are even saying that they wish someone would sneak into their yard at night and give them free landscaping. I totally got away with it, and honestly, I could not believe that he didn't even attempt and fail to sue me or anything. Instead, he is now responsible for those trees, and I cannot wait to sit and watch over my fence for as long as I live here to see those trees grow and prosper. I know that with how slow trees grow, I will never see his yard fully grown, but I know someone will, and I can only hope they appreciate it as much as I do. Plus, if he tries to move, selling the house might be a bit of a headache, but that is just a bonus when it comes to revenge. And yeah, ripe stars, I would say that is a very special type of, maybe not tree law, but maybe we could call it tree law revenge or something. I'm not sure how to call a story like this. But I gotta say, planting trees on someone's property who hates trees seems like a pretty good way to get revenge. Definitely a unique story, and if you enjoy the stories about awful neighbors, then I would really appreciate it if we could once again reach 1000 likes on the video. Thank you so much for your amazing support, it really means the world to me and it helps the channel tremendously. Thank you so much. And the next one is an absolutely XXL story, so please be sure to stay until the end, and it is titled "Manager Fired and We Got Promoted." I worked as a security guard for a standard security company, but we were contracted with a petrochemical company to do security at their world HQ. The company is a Fortune 500 company making billions a year. Therefore, the account we had meant that we did security for all of their locations inside the US, while other companies handled sites outside the United States. This account was worth around $30 million a year. I joined the company in March and things seemed great. My shift was very workable, 10:30 AM to 6:30 PM, Monday to Friday. And indeed, ripe stars, that is a pretty good time to work. Who wouldn't like to start their work at 10:30? Anyway, I spent most of my day doing paperwork and signing in other contractors and delivery drivers. Honestly, it felt like a pretty decent job. It did not pay very well, but you cannot complain when you sit on your ass all day. However, soon we began to have a staffing problem. People were leaving and getting fired way too quickly. We were supposed to have about 15 guards, but we got as low as 9. This doesn't include the 3 veteran guards employed by the client company, as they were separate from us, and this is very important later. This caused horrible schedules. In a 26-hour period I worked 20 hours, which I later found out is illegal in our state, and we would easily put in 60-hour weeks. Every single guard was working overtime. It caused havoc with our personal lives. My girlfriend even told me she was thinking about leaving me because out of the entire week I would see her maybe an hour a day before I fell asleep, and we lived together. So obviously some compensation was required. Overtime was decent pay, yes, but we wanted an overall raise. We got paid way too little to be working 70-hour weeks, 12 to 16-hour shifts, etc. Each facility has a supervisor through the contractor company, and each set of facilities has a branch manager who supervises specific accounts for the regional manager. While the branch manager was supposed to visit each facility once a month, there are 3 facilities in his area on the account. I saw him twice in my 1-year period with the company. Apparently the client company had a lot of pull in the state, so the security company was basically their lapdog, and they tried to keep their distance as much as legally allowed. The issue started when one of the guards, we will call him Roy, started talking about how his friend who worked at the sister site and all of his fellow guards all got raises because they were short-staffed and the company wanted to thank them for pulling extra hours. This got a lot of the guards furious. We were much worse off with our staff and we worked at the World HQ and none of us had even been suggested raises. This led to the guards being particularly unmotivated and led to people refusing to pick up shifts. So, one of the senior guards decided to call the BM and complain, asking why the sister site would get raises and why we would not. Apparently it was more of a rant than an actual conversation, but at the end of it, BM promised he would look at getting our raises and that he would speak with the regional manager to get the raises going. When word of this reached the facility, it was one of the only things everyone could talk about. We would talk about how excited everyone was to get raises, and the BM also promised that we would be getting new guards to help out, so no more 60+ hour shift work weeks. Everything was happy in our world for about 48 hours. When I get to work early morning on Thursday, I see an email addressed to all the security guards and our BM is CC'd in it. He never gets copied in emails and the email said this. Hello, as you are all aware of, all of the rumors that have been brought to my attention have been addressed. I would like to take this time and remind everyone not to engage in this activity again. Moving forward, bring all concerns to the attention of your immediate supervisor so they may be addressed. Spreading rumors and causing panic will be looked at as creating an uncomfortable and hostile work environment. Disciplinary action will be taken. Please let me know if you have any questions or concerns about the matter. Also make sure that your attention while on site is on our purpose. We should all be focused on the objective of providing the client with outstanding service. We were pissed. Basically, we were being told that we were not getting raises and the BM claimed that the sister site getting raises was nothing but a rumor. Roy was berated for supposedly causing a panic, and since senior guard was the one that went over the supervisor and straight to the BM, he was being told his job was potentially on the line. Everyone was absolutely appalled and one of the older guards quit on the spot. The company had basically flat out lied and made promises they had no intention of keeping, and we legally could not prove anything. And thus here is where the revenge starts. We had the phone numbers to the sister site in the directory, but did not know who the supervisor was over there. I asked Roy who his friend that had worked there was, and if I could get into contact with him. Unfortunately, he had quit and joined the Air Force just days prior. At this point, I felt stuck, but I didn't want anyone to be screwed over by a company just because we were the little people. So I stuck my neck out and using the phone in my office, I called the client of the sister site. The operator picks up and I explain that I'm a guard at the HQ and needed to speak with the supervisor of their site. The operator gladly puts me through. Frank answers the phone and I explain who I am and why I am calling. I don't BS with him and just flat out ask the big question, did their site get raises? They did, and then some. It turns out not only did all their guards get raises, including himself, but they also received bonus checks for their hard work. I could barely speak. I couldn't tell if I was furious at how he had been treated or how thankful I was that Roy and senior guard were not lying. I asked Frank very calmly, can I get that in writing? The next morning I asked for a meeting with the BM, the site supervisor, the client and the 3 guards that were willing to show up. Myself, Roy, senior guard and a random guard who was willing to be present. He was in the loop most of the time. The BM is annoyed by this meeting and demands to know what is going on. Senior guard and I explain how we are here to address how employees were lied to and how we were being threatened because we wanted compensation just as much as the sister site, and on top of that, how all 4 of us would leave if this issue was not addressed. Client, what are they talking about? BM, we have made it clear that the rumors have been addressed and that no such promises were made. This meeting is over. OP, not so fast, sir. There is one other person that would like to speak with you. And in walks the knight in shining armor, Frank. We watch in amusement as all the color drains from BM's face. He stands there completely still, not making a sound. Frank smiles in an almost predatory fashion as he knows the slaughter he is about to partake in. Client: who is this? Frank: I'm the site supervisor for your other site. I have here documentation that not only did BM lie about my guards getting raises, but also a recorded phone call, being all calls from company phones are monitored, that has BM on record stating that he was going to pursue seeking a raise for this site's guards. At this point, even I am speechless. I didn't know how he got a copy of the phone call between Senior Guard and BM, but he did and was holding the transcript. The client goes from confused to angry, glaring at the BM. The BM still standing there, white as a ghost, and now our site supervisor is staring at him in what looks like pure rage. Mostly because he took the flak for the BM's lies. BM: how did you? Client: you are right, BM. This meeting is over for you. Get out of my office. The BM glances at himself and Senior Guard in what looks like pure defeat and mopes out of the office. Client: Frank, let me see what you have. Frank hands over all the evidence and the client looks through it all for about 5 minutes. He finished going over it and closes the booklet and looks over at the site supervisor. Did you know about this? The site supervisor explains how he was simply doing what he was told and not to ask questions. He was ex-military, so that mindset was believable, and after this, the client instructed us all to go home and we would be given money for the shifts we were supposed to work, but instructed us to come back at 7 AM sharp the next morning and to meet in the conference room. We all show up the next day and we are greeted by the client and another younger lady who he explains to us is the financial manager of the whole company. The BM is also sitting there, but on the other side of the conference table. We sit down and she starts off by apologizing for the behavior of the BM and explained how they did not like this sort of thing. However, since he was a contractor, they could not legally hold him accountable. The BM seemed somewhat relieved by this and my heart admittedly sank. She said we could file reports against him and they would confirm them, but they could not partake in any form beyond that. Then the financial manager gives the big but. She says her offer is that we can work for the client personally as in-house security and not contractors. They said they would hire all 4 of us on the spot and we could start working tomorrow. This included full benefits, a huge increase in pay, over $20 an hour, whoa, that is insane, and 6 weeks of vacation time a year. However, the offer only stood while we were in the room. The BM is fuming as he has just lost 4 guards. Of course we all accept. She makes it clear, however, that we are not hired until the meeting is over. Then the financial manager's attention turns to the BM. She explains that since 4 guards had just quit, that he was now in severe violation of the contract due to lack of staff and that they were using the break clause to terminate the account effective immediately. The BM tried to argue, saying that stealing contractors with the intent of using a break clause in a contract is illegal, which it is. Her response was something like this. Financial manager: you are correct, which is why these men are not currently employed by us. They left on their own accord and are unemployed. Since this is a severe violation of the contract, we will be dealing with this here and now. The BM is speechless at the perfectly deceptive and well-played loophole that the client company had just exploited, and was also told if they decided to pursue a lawsuit, they would be allowed to legally bring the evidence of the contractor's company's deception and blatant lies to its employees. The client and the financial manager spent the next 4 hours taking phone calls and we cannot leave the room. After they hang up the phone for the last time, the client turns to the BM and explains calmly but firmly, "Please step outside with me for a moment." He also gestures for myself and Senior Guard to stand up and follow them. We walk outside and the client smiles. "OP, Senior Guard, would you please, as my security officers, escort BM off-site? His company is no longer associated with us." We gladly escort him to his car. 3 years after this happened and all 4 of us still work there. We heard from another guard that the BM was fired basically as soon as he got back to his company's HQ and Frank was offered the BM position. He apparently responded by handing them his resignation letter. He went to move on to another security company overseas. At last I knew he had been in France for almost a year. Our site supervisor was moved to another facility but still works for the company last I checked. We love working for the client and all 4 of us became good friends. We all work similar shifts, so every Friday after work we all go to the bar and have a good time. We also became fairly close to the client, so he invites us over to his house for special occasions. And yes, the security director for a petrochemical company has it big. Thanks to my job, however, I was able to save my relationship, take great vacations, buy a brand new, at the time, Chevy Silverado, and buy an actual house. So, to sum things up, don't F with the security guard. And wow, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, I am absolutely speechless. That was one of the best, I would say, revenge stories that we have ever read, in my opinion. If I remember correctly, this was both posted on Malicious Compliance and r/Pro Revenge, however, I think it definitely fits Pro Revenge possibly a little bit better. And Ripe Stars, with this we have reached the end of the video. However, if you still cannot get enough of my content, then I would highly suggest to check out my endless binge watch playlist, which will soon show up in the left corner of the screen. In addition, I would really appreciate it if you could not only subscribe to the channel but also turn on the bell notifications, which you can do by clicking on the little bell icon right next to the subscribe button. This will help my channel tremendously and this will make sure that you don't miss any of my videos. Furthermore, if you want to see additional Ripe content that I don't post on YouTube, then I would suggest to head on over to patreon.com/RipeYouTube for more than 50 exclusive videos that you will not see anywhere else. Thank you so much for your amazing daily support and I hope to see you again tomorrow.